What's up, Internet? Welcome to Once Over. I'm Kaylee, and today we're going to be giving the once over to 5 movies from 2003 that you probably missed.
Give it a good once over.
Giving us the once over.
Giving him the once over.
Give me a once over.
Down to give us the once over.
For a routine once over.
Once over.
Oh, just once over lightly.
If you follow my channel, you probably know that I like to do this little series where we talk about 5 movies from a particular year that I think are absolutely incredible, but you probably haven't ever seen. And if you haven't been following my channel, then hi, hello, welcome. I would love it if you came and subscribed and liked and did all the things. I talk about lots and lots of different movies. I do movie reviews and I do this little series. So today we're going to be talking about 2003. As with all of these series, I would love to hear about your favorites from 2003. I think there's a ton of great stuff from that year. It really honestly was a pretty exciting movie year, so I surely missed some good stuff. And unsurprisingly, I just picked a random year. If there's a particular year that you'd like me to check out, please let me know. Let's get into it. First up, we are going to be talking about one of the most incredible action films of all time. It's a Taiwanese martial arts film. Do you know this one? It's Ong Bak. This is a feast for any action fan. It stars Tony Jaa as a young martial artist who has to go and retrieve the head of a statue in a big city. This was actually Jaa's breakout film, and usually with like all of the classic martial artists, it takes me a little bit of time to get into them. Think like, you know, Bruce Lee, etc. It took him a couple of movies to really get there. Jaa is incredible right out of the gate. There are almost no words to describe the incredible choreography in the fight scenes in this film. It is just fun. It's fun. It's fun. It's so much fun. And Jaa did all of his own stunts, which is amazing. He's so talented. They ended up making Ong Bak 2 and 3, so those are also really great, but obviously we're sticking to 2003 today, so we're not gonna be talking about those. The first chase scene that happens in the streets is like, I can't even describe it. It's like one of the best action sequences of all time. This is one of those near perfect movies. I really like martial arts films. Next up, we're going to be talking about an animated film. Perhaps one of my favorite animated films of all time, although The Iron Giant is pretty high up there also. But the movie that we're talking about today for 2003 is The Triplets of Belleville. This movie was directed by Sylvain Chomet, who you might remember from things like Paris Je T'aime and also The Illusionist. And it has what is quite possibly the slowest car chase scene of all time. Yet it still manages to be riveting. This movie is all about Madame Souza, who discovers that her grandson has been kidnapped during the Tour de France, and she and her beloved pooch Bruno go to try to rescue him. They team up with the Belleville sisters, who are kind of like, think vaudeville, kind of like song and dance, aged, boring sorts of groups, all the stuff that I really, truly, truly love. The Fred Astaire kind of days, the Mae West kind of days, the Sophie Tucker kind of days, my favorite comedian. One of the things that's truly unique about this movie is that it has almost zero witty dialogue, and yet it is incredible. In fact, it has zero dialogue, and yet it is incredible. It is gloriously animated. Stunning. One time I heard it compared to an Art Nouveau version of Finding Nemo, which I think is hilarious and kind of accurate. It's like 1,000 times better than Finding Nemo though. I might be more in love with the stout, dowdy Madame Souza more than I love anything else in the world. Why? I have no idea.
I don't know.
This one is a true cinematic experience, and I highly recommend it. I prefer it to The Illusionist. I think that a lot of people kind of have that flip-flopped, but for me, this is just one of the heights of animation. Next up, let's take a huge turn and talk about August Underground Mordom, directed by Fred Vogel. This is nothing like The Triplets of Belleville. You might be aware of Fred Vogel because he was running Toe Tag Productions, which is a production company that basically did snuff-esque films. Very, very hyper-realistic, terrifying, disgusting movies that basically just follow around killers. And this movie is no exception to that. 2 deranged friends basically go on a murder rampage, and that's it. There's a lot of torture, a lot of disgustingness, and for me, this is actually the best of the fake snuff torture porn genre. This is the height of it. There is a true grittiness about this film that makes it hard to watch, and yet you can't turn away. This is Vogel's best film. But I will say the reason that it is his best film is because of something that he understands as a director that I think a lot of people don't get. If you are going to make a disgusting movie that relies entirely on torture, the only way to do that is to convince me that it is real. And this movie convinces me that it is real because they do things like show me things that are actually really happening. For example, somebody really gets their ear pierced at one point in this film. But then I'm also seeing murders and torture. And I don't know where the line between reality and fantasy becomes blurred. There's like vomiting and stuff in this. It is disgusting. If you don't like disgusting filth, trash, scumminess, you will not like this movie. I think it's incredible. It's fucking disgusting. I'm interested in films like this because I think that they reflect in an interesting way upon my psyche as a voyeur who is watching films. I watch movies as an escape. I can't do the things that are happening on film, and I love that. And this movie could not possibly be further from who I am as a person. So it succeeds in making me feel emotions, and I love watching movies in order to feel and ugh. The acting in this one is really great. You can tell that this is just a group of friends. I can't remember if they're from Cleveland or Pittsburgh, but they basically were just making these disgusting movies together, and you can feel that. The only part of the film that made me realize that it wasn't real is when Killjoy actually comes on screen. If you like metal music, then you will know Killjoy from Necrophagia, R.I.P. He was absolutely incredible, and I will admit that his acting prowess is not to the height of the other people in this movie. So he was the only time in the movie that I was like, oh wait, this isn't real. And I kind of needed that because honestly, there are times where you don't know if what you're watching is real or not. And again, that's the success of the movie. It is definitely raw and gritty. Is it the height of filmmaking? No. But is it really, really interesting and exciting? Yeah. Now we're gonna spin around again and talk about a mockumentary. I really like this one. I know everybody's gonna hate me for saying this, but it's Pauly Shore is Dead. You guys, Pauly Shore is great. And if you haven't seen this movie, then you are missing out on some of the really exciting stuff that he's done. I like all of his movies. Probably Son-in-Law is my favorite, but I think that Pauly Shore is Dead is an excellent, interesting way to talk about the death of an actor in Hollywood. This is a semi-biographical movie directed and starring Pauly Shore, where Pauly Shore, whose career has obviously dwindled, tries to drum up fake press by faking his own death.
Actor-comedian Pauly Shore, dead at the age of 29.
The news hit the entertainment world like a big, tragic hurricane.
The kid wasn't wired right.
Stay dead.
And unsurprisingly, because it's Pauly Shore, who obviously has been a comedian for a very, very long time and has all of the comedy connections, this has tons of great cameos in it. We get both Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee. We get Tommy Chong, Dustin Diamond, Andy Dick, all of the famous 2000s people. Oh, Corey Feldman, how could I forget him? Oh, and Fred Durst. Again, thank you 2003. I also really love that the entire thing that spawns Pauly Shore's idea of faking his own death is from Sam Kinison, who's amazing. This is just a goofy, silly, funny movie that I enjoy. It's a good piece of trash for after you watch a movie like August Underground Mortem. Also, I'm totally in love with Pauly Shore. I think he's just a really interesting dude. There was like a period of time where he had very few Instagram followers, and he would just like sit in his closet and live stream, and it was a very sad closet where he just had like 2 white t-shirts hanging up behind him. And I was completely addicted to those Instagram lives. Like, I could not stop watching them. I want him to do well, and I like him a lot. Wheezin' the juice.
We's a little juice.
I'm not a good Pauly Shore. Why do people hate on him so much? Explain to me why you guys hate Pauly Shore. You're wrong. And lastly, we are going to be talking about a movie directed by Fenton Bailey and Randy Barbado. Do you know this one? Do you know who they are? They also directed Inside Deep Throat and also The Eyes of Tammy Faye. They're really great directors who I feel like don't get a lot of credit. And they like to dive into reality, which is exactly what Party Monster does. Not in the same way as August Underground Mortem. This movie is based on the real life story of Michael Alec, who was a club kid in the 80s and 90s in New York City. Club kids are like, think about your first gen ravers. These guys were completely crazy. They would dress in the wildest costumes and do the wildest things. What makes this story particularly interesting is that Michael Alec, who kind of was the self-proclaimed head of the club kids, he ended up murdering somebody named Angel over a drug deal because they did a lot of drugs.
Now, Michael Alig's style has changed every time he's been here. His current look, if you look closely, is sort of, what do you call that, accident victim drug addict.
He ended up pleading guilty to first-degree manslaughter, and this is the story of how that all unfolded, told through the eyes of James St. James, who was another club kid. Alec is played by Macaulay Culkin, who is outstanding in this role, and James St. James is played by Seth Green.
I am James St. James, the original.
The original drug child.
They completely embody these guys. There's tons and tons of video footage of the actual club kids, and I think that the two of them were the perfect casting for this film. Specifically, the movie is based on James St. James's book called Party Monster.
I called my mom and I was trying to explain to her what I had been doing the night before, and she said, "Now, Jimmy, don't you wish you'd finished college now?"
And I think that it was really perfectly adapted for the screen. This movie is so vibrant and it is so beautiful to look at, even when it's just disgusting, disgusting filth. And that's what it needed to be, because that's what that scene was. At the time that this movie was released in 2003, Alec was still in jail, but he did end up getting out in 2014. He then died from a drug overdose in 2020. Not only is the story of these club kids very interesting, but it's really well told in this film. It kind of fits in the same vibe as movies like Spun and Requiem for a Dream, but because it is this vibrant club kid scene, it feels very different than those films. Those tend to be a little bit more muted, whereas this has tons of excitement. There are times that you feel like you're there with them, which probably would not have been a great idea. Don't hang out with these guys. James St. James is still alive and being very luxurious somewhere, I'm sure. I think he's been like a guest judge on like RuPaul's Drag Race and those sorts of shows, maybe America's Next Top Model. I don't know the shows that he's been on, but I feel like I've seen him around that whole circuit. So he is still making that life work for him, and he was not involved in the murder. I also would very highly recommend reading James St. James's book. I think he's actually written a couple, but Party Monster is really interesting. I love the fact that you don't know how much he is making up. So he's not a reliable storyteller, and that makes the movie even more exciting because I'm getting this version of a story that James St. James is telling, and I can't trust him. I like not knowing if my narrator or my storyteller is on the up and up. Well, anyways, that was 5 movies from the year 2003 that I absolutely loved, but I think that you probably missed. Did you see any of these? Tell me which ones you like, which ones you hate. Tell me other movies from 2003 that you think I should be checking out, because I am sure there is tons of good stuff that I have missed, and I would love to hear it. Thank you so very much for watching. I cannot wait for the next one. Bye.